Hey everybody, so thanks for tuning in to Press Pause. Aurora and I are here and we're really excited for today's topic. Aurora is the 4-year-old dachshund that's that's in the intro video of the channel. Yeah, if you guys see any clips, things like that, she's the editor, so any little blurbs and things that pop up, that is her. But yeah, essentially, we wanted to create this channel. We are official travel agents. We specialize in Disney, Universal, World Caribbean, Carnival Cruise Line, Sandals Resort, SeaWorld. So feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help you book your next set of magical memories with us. And yeah, we primarily creating this to just have fun. You know, we want to talk about things that we enjoy and, educate you guys on things that you may or may not know, or just give some funny renditions on some things, right? So we talk about entertainment and things like that, movies and stuff. And obviously one of them that we're talking about today, which is one of our favorites, is Middle Earth. Okay. We love Middle Earth. Tolkien and his works that he created is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I didn't read the books. I don't read anything that's thicker than like a Bernstein Bears book. So that definitely rules out Lord of the Rings. But I love the films. I love the Hobbits. Just fantastic, and super excited to talk about it today. And what we're going to talk about is the fate of Middle Earth after Lord of the Rings, specifically focusing on the different races of Middle Earth after the events of Lord of the Rings. Now, we do see the previous history to Lord of the Rings, previous history of The Hobbit. We see glimpses of some wars and things like that that went on before the events of those movies. However, we don't get to see the end and what happens at the end or after the events of those movies. And so that's something that we do want to focus on. That's what we're going to break down today. Spoilers for each of them. They all die.
Dead.
Yes, Gimli, dead.
Oh, no.
Anyway, first off, we're going to talk about the elves. Okay, yes, the elves are immortal. Tolkien didn't lie. They are immortal from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
So, again, Tolkien's not a liar, but it doesn't mean the elves exist in the way that we know them, in their current form. Essentially, they're like spirits or souls that have basically a shell. Okay, and the shell is their body, right? So their physical form is actually a shell that just just holds in their soul or their spirit, and this is essentially what they're made up as. Okay, they're magical, spiritual soul or entity, and like I said, they have a soul or a shell that kind of is their body that we actually see visually. And this makes them very light on their feet, and it actually is shown in the movies when you watch the snow scene and Legolas is walking on the snow. Yeah, that's showing that that fact about them. It's also the same as to why he can Mario jump in the Hobbit movies. One of my scenes that I can't get out of my head now. So every time I watch that, I just hear the Mario jumps. But essentially, the elves, going back to how they were created, where they originated from, Morgoth is one. We're going to give some backstory. Morgoth is one of the Valar, okay? Which is godlike beings. Valar are basically, like, if you think about today's religion and things like that, they're godlike beings. They're kind of like angels in a way. So kind of think of them like that, right? But Morgoth was one of the ones. There's like 12 to 16 of them, and they're below the actual god of Middle Earth. But there's like 12 of them, I believe, and he becomes evil. He wants his own power. He wants to rule. And because of that, his deeds destroyed the two sacred trees. So essentially when Middle Earth was created, they had these two sacred trees that provided light, right? And it provided life at the same time to the realm. Then what happened was he destroyed them, and then it created the sun and the moon. Okay, now when that was created, time became a concept. There used to not be really night and day, and now there was. And so time became a thing. And basically, think about it this way: his evil acts of doing that started tainting Middle Earth. And so it was no longer that elves in their shell would stay immortal. They began to age, even though it was something that you would never notice, you would never see, because it's ages that they go before they even would think of fading away or anything like that. That's essentially what happens. So fading is what occurs, all right, to the elves. And so the elves, essentially the elves, they don't have the ability to maintain their shells indefinitely anymore because of the acts of Morgoth. So even though it took a very, very long time, okay, the elves do fade from Middle Earth. Their shells fade, and they basically become a spirit that roams, around. And I don't know if it's like if we see it or anything like that. There's not really all that many details of this, but maybe think of them. I think of them as like force ghosts in a way. They're like there, but they're not really there, and I don't know. That's kind of how I think of it, but kind of like force ghosts. So next up, so that's what ends up happening with the elves. They fade out of existence in Middle Earth, even though their souls or spirits may still be around. They don't have a physical presence. Next is the dwarves. Okay, the dwarves are actually beings that weren't created by Iluvatar. Iluvatar is actually God, so he's above Morgoth. He's above the Valar. He is God in Tolkien's works. And Iluvatar is one of the beings that he is the being that created pretty much everything. And one of the other Valar, so just like Morgoth, who is right below Iluvatar, his name was Mahal. And I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but he's one of the Valar that actually created the dwarves. So it's not that he created it because of anything bad. He just wanted to make something. He liked to create it. He was like the craftsman or something like that, I believe, of those beings, and he wanted to craft beings. But found out that Iluvatar is the only one that can actually create real life beings. So when he made the dwarves, they were flawed in many ways, but one of them was they were kind of mindless. They didn't have a mind of their own. They didn't have their own being, right? And so then Iluvatar came, saw that they were not created out of, anything bad or evil. And so essentially he finished the process, right? He finished the process, made them their own entities and beings. And so they were fostered from the earth and everything like that. Now, because he only finished the process, he didn't fix any issues that there were with them. And because of that, this is why they eventually ended up dying off. And so one of the big reasons is dwarf women.
It's true you don't see many dwarf women.
Although there were dwarf women, there were only about one dwarf woman for every 3 men. And they also didn't bear many children. So when they did have children, it was very rare that they had a girl. And that didn't allow them to continue breeding very much. And then obviously throughout time, they would struggle to keep producing. And then, obviously with the wars and battles and things like that, they eventually died off because of those issues that they had. It took a long time, but they did. They died out over time, and the dwarves were no more. Next is the Ents, okay? And the Ents being tree-ish beings like you see in Lord of the Rings franchise. It's an easy explanation for what happened to their fate. They said it there. They actually lost the Ent wives. So this is why the Ents ended up dying out. Without the Ent wives, they can't make little Entings. And every time I hear Entings, I think of little baby Groot.
I am Groot.
That's right.
It's sad that they lost the Ent-wives. I don't know if they would have continued living on, but it is interesting. They lost the Ent-wives. They couldn't have Entings, and then they ended up basically, turning into trees, and they just became regular trees. So the Ents ended up dying off in a way. Next is the Hobbits, and this is probably one of the more interesting ones that people are going to be interested in, is the Hobbits. But though you may not know it, they're actually closely related to men. And so it actually stands to reason that over time, hobbits would eventually evolve. naturally into men. So hobbits wouldn't necessarily die off, they would evolve into men. And men are the ones who rule Middle Earth as time goes on. After the Fourth Age and things like that, men are the ones that are there, and there's no real other beings like this, real intelligent beings other than men. And so the hobbits, while they don't really die off, they eventually evolve into men over time, and that's what happens to hobbits. Now, next two are very interesting. The orcs / goblins in the movies, I know they're depicted very differently, and they're kind of two separate races. But realistically, like in the books and stuff, they're not really separate races. They come from the same thing. So they were actually made by Morgoth. Remember the being that we said became evil? He actually kidnapped a bunch of elves and twisted them into these new creatures, and that was orcs or goblins. And with the wars, seeing their depleting numbers, knowing the elves were no longer immortal, which orcs originated from, there's two different things that would stand to reason. Either they would fade away, similar to the elves, because they came from elves. I don't think that would be the case because they're not really magical creatures anymore, at least from what we see in the movies. So I would say that honestly what happens is over time, they're kind of slaughtered. They're hunted down and defeated. I don't think we ever saw a female orc or a female goblin. Not that we'd be able to tell the difference. I don't know. But I don't think we saw that either. So I think over time they'd just be hunted down and eradicated from Earth. And the last one, very interesting here, is the trolls. Okay, so trolls, we aren't fully told exactly their origin by Tolkien, but in the books, okay, Treebeard does say that he believes that trolls are just like orcs and goblins in the sense that they were once Ents. And they were twisted and corrupted into trolls. Very similar to how orcs and goblins came from elves, trolls came from the Ents. And I think that's probably true. That is the most plausible thing that happens. That's the only thing that is said in the books or movies about this, and so that's the only thing we have to go off of. So I think that's what we have to. So if you look at Morgoth and you look at what he did when he made the orcs, he twisted them. When he made the Balrogs, he took entities like Gandalf and other entities like him and Radagast and things like that, the wizards as we know them, and those beings, he twisted those into Balrogs. So every dangerous creature, dragons, all of those things, they were corrupted and changed by Morgoth. And so you'd think trolls very same way because they followed him as well. So just like orcs from elves. So anyway, since the Entwives were supposedly all died out and we lost them, we never saw female trolls either. So it would seem, they would naturally die out. They would either be hunted down over time by the humans, or just die out with old age and things like that. I don't know how long trolls live, but that essentially would be the reason why trolls ended up dying out. And so then what happens later on? Essentially, Middle Earth becomes a human world. It becomes full of men and humans, and that is it. That is the intelligent beings that are ruling over Middle Earth, and essentially it becomes Earth at that point. So it's very interesting. Maybe it's Tolkien maybe even thinking of a new way of coming up with history of time and history of Earth in his own way and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to see and think about. But yeah, anyway, all of them died off. They all faded away, and it just became a realm of men. Yes, sad in some ways, but that's what eventually would end up happening. So what did you guys think? Did you think it was interesting? Let us know what you thought of the content, if you enjoyed it, and anything that you would like to hear about, anything you'd like a video on. We'd love to do some research or figure things out and educate you guys on some of these different worlds, things like that. We're going to get into various different mediums, Jurassic Park, Harry Potter's, all that different stuff. So, Marvel and DC Comics and all those things. So feel free to reach out to us. Let us know what you'd like to see a video on. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and subscribe. Aurora would love some subscribes and some likes, please. She really enjoys those, and it'll really help the channel out a lot. Our information will be below in the description of the video, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, we are travel agents. We specialize in Disney, Universal, Royal Caribbean, Carnival Cruise Line, Sandals Resort, SeaWorld, yeah, so feel free to reach out to us for anything you guys need from a vacation standpoint, and we will also be creating some additional videos. So we'll talk to you guys again on the next one.